Hello, everybody, and welcome to Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to. In case you're new to the program, I'm Brandon Ellis. I'm your host and also the owner of elliTek. As we jump into the episode for today, I want to ask that you hit that follow button and subscribe button based upon the platform that you're listening on. And if you're listening specifically on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you enjoy what you hear today, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We sure would appreciate it. Now that we've got the marketing out of the way, I just want to say thanks for tuning in. So, let's get started. Hey everybody, and welcome to Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to. I'm Brandon Ellis, your host, the owner of elliTek, and with me, of course, is Miss Beth Elliott.
Hello, Brandon. Hey, everybody.
So, welcome back. So it's been
a while. It seems like.
Month.
Yeah.
Well, it seems longer to us because I think we sometimes we pre-record all of these things, but when we were going through, especially with some of our Siemens guests,
we pre-recorded.
We were pre-recording a lot, so we'd take advantage of them being here.
Yes.
And go from there. So it has been a minute since we've been sitting in the elliTek podcasting studios here at elliTek University in Knoxville, Tennessee. So thanks for joining us today. So we've got a lot to talk about today, so I want to jump straight into that. But first of all, I'm going to adjust my microphone.
Yes, please.
and then we're going to
give a big thank you to our veterans.
Yep.
Because it's going to be Veterans Day on November 11th, and we just want to say thank you, veterans.
That's
for
right.
Your service.
Thank you very much for your service. I was not in the military, a regret of mine, but my father was in the military, and grandfather, and cousins, and aunts and uncles, and so they do quite an honorable thing for us.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for your service and for all that you do for us, and I know that that's something that a lot of people say nowadays, but I want you to know that we mean it.
Yes.
So anyway, that's from the heart. So the other thing, our Tennessee VOLS are doing quite well.
They are. They're looking good. So.
Now, we're just going to say that they're doing well because there's a big game coming up, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be yet. So,
I'm proud of them either way.
That's right. We have had a monster season.
It's been absolutely fabulous.
if you follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, you probably realize that I am a huge Tennessee Vols fan, as is Beth.
Yes.
But she's not as vocal about it as I am on social media. And so
not on social media, but watching the game, you better watch
right.
out.
That's right. So congratulations to Coach Heupel and the season that they're having. It's been very exciting this season. So let's hop right into it. I'm sure half of you are tuning in to hear about Tennessee volunteer football.
I'm sure.
But for the other half who want to hear something about manufacturing and automation in manufacturing, hit us with the title there, Bill.
All right. So today's title is Industrial Automation. It doesn't have to be totally unexpected.
And so we're talking about some really interesting things. Now, this is kind of a look back, but this isn't one of those compilation episodes that that you watch on your favorite show, and all of a sudden they're having
show.
they're having dream or remember when we remember this. Remember, it's not going to be that. But we were talking. Beth and I were talking about. Predictions, not really predictions, but topics that we were talking about in 2021, as long ago as July of 2021, on other podcast episodes, and we'll be making references to some of those episodes. But I was really proud of us because we were, Beth doesn't want to be doom and gloom, but we were making some predictions and saying and giving some encouragement as early as July of 2021 that have pretty much been spot on.
Yeah. And so that was triggered us to let's look back and see what the predictions were for the challenges, what the internet
coming.
says.
Yeah.
So we looked for like articles and blog posts and stuff for from late 21 and early 2022 about the challenges facing manufacturers, and just kind of see how we are measuring up and talking about those.
As far as our capabilities?
Yeah.
How smart we are.
No. Are we doing our listeners a favor?
So were we right or were we wrong? So
They decide.
yeah, you all have to decide on that, because that's the beauty of brandology, is it doesn't always have to be correct. It just always has to be interesting. So we've talked about a lot of things over this past year. This has been, without question, a very challenging year for manufacturing, for distribution, for automation in general, for people who don't even think about automation. I mean, have you tried to buy a car?
Yeah.
Have you? Oh, we're coming up on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I heard this morning the cost of a turkey is up by 76%.
Oh, my word. My word. I was going to guess like 30%. Oh, my goodness.
Well, and on top of that, so that I'm not going to say that's inflation, because there's also a shortage of turkeys because of an Asian bird flu. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who are planning to celebrate Thanksgiving, you may want to shop early. So usually we would always try to get a non-frozen turkey. Mm-hmm. It may be the year for the frozen bird.
Yeah.
Make some room in the deep freeze and go out and get it, but also get ready to spend some money for it. Mm-hmm. So everything this year, we've seen record inflation. We've seen just the gamut of things.
And that was not in the predictions.
It wasn't.
The recession, inflation, that talk mm-hmm. wasn't in those in the challenges facing manufacturers. So that's
what's interesting is there's just as many economic analysts right now, for the ones that I follow and even the ones that I don't listen to often. But I'd say it's an even split as to whether we're in recession or we're not. Mm-hmm. And so, because this year has just been a very tumultuous year, and it's because it doesn't line up with anything. Yeah. Your playbook just doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. So, the traditional definition of recession is 2 consecutive down quarters. Well, we've had that, but we've also had, according to the U.S. jobs report, record employment, or record low unemployment, which means, and also increases in wages. And so some analysts will say a recession has to consider that wages stay flat.
Okay.
Well, they haven't. So as prices have gone up, wages have also gone up. Oh. And so that's different. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not an economist by any stretch, but I listen to a lot of them. And from an engineering standpoint, I mean, it's just math. And a business standpoint, I get it. People are making more money. So if the prices go up, they can afford it. So they keep spending. So you would expect when inflation goes up, if wages stay flat, then people stop spending, mm-hmm. and that's recession, leads to recession. But people haven't stopped spending. It's a crazy year. We've had demand for things, but yet we're watching the markets collapse. So it's just a strange year. And honestly, for manufacturers,
to navigate these waters,
I mean, if you're in manufacturing, whether you're small, medium, or large manufacturer, you're probably shaking your head and saying, "I know, yeah, you're right. This has been rough."
Yeah.
It has been rough, and from a distribution standpoint, it's been rough for us, mm-hmm. Because we've been having to give lead times on certain products that are crazy long for a long time.
Yeah.
And who would have thought it would have gone this long? So, again, we're not trying to be doom and gloom, but we're kind of trying to say let's assess where we started. Let's look at where we're going, mm-hmm. and let's try to figure out how we can. Some ways to make it through.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're close to the bottom.
Yeah. From what I've read, the manufacturers are expecting the chip shortages to start giving way mm-hmm. early quarter 1 of next year, maybe quarter 2.
And so what industries are being really affected by the chip shortages? Again, I mentioned automation. So if you're trying to automate in your plant, you probably have pesky distributors like us and robotic integrators like us and systems integrators and machine builders that are in general telling you, yeah, we'd love to build that for you, but I just got off the phone with the pesky distributor who's telling me, that's going to be a 3, 4, 5 month, even 1 year lead time. And that's been going on for about 13 to 14 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, goodness gracious, what's the deal? Well, semiconductors have been part of that. Resin shortages, which we talked about resin shortages when we had Peter with the LinMot on.
Yeah.
He was talking about that. Resin, of course, anything plastic, things of that nature. Circuit breakers. That's the thing that's blown my mind. Circuit breakers, both residential and commercial and industrial circuit breakers, have been so difficult to find because I guess the molded case circuit breaker material has resin in it, and it's not easily found, or it's in shortage. Why? I have no idea. But these are the things that have been so just tenuous that we've dealt with. And so let's jump into some of the things. So you've done some research. You've looked back in the past, and you've pulled some of these predicted challenges that were predicted to affect manufacturing.
About this time last year,
yeah.
These came out, yeah.
So what's number one?
Labor shortages.
Yeah, we kind of just talked about that. So,
well, I think you need to touch on the new ROI, because you talked about that was last July, wasn't it?
Last July. Yep. I guess, yeah. So there's the pre-COVID ROI and the post-COVID ROI, and when I first came up with this in July, I thought, that's kind of interesting thing that I
thought it would be lasting until the end of the year, but this is
and we'll be back to the old ROI.
Yeah.
We haven't, and so let's talk a bit about that. So when this comes down to return on investment, ROI, return on investment, and should you automate, should you not? It was also in that same July time frame on one of the podcasts that we were talking about. I think I did a call to action to say, look, if you are thinking about automating, you should automate now, because my prediction then in July of last year was that we're getting ready to see some major interest rate increases, and boy have we. So even recently, the Fed keeps hiking rates, trying to get a handle on inflation, and honestly, I don't think we've needed the last couple. We just need time. We just need time for the medicine to work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm afraid we're pushing the gas pedal a little bit, or the brakes, whichever analogy you want to use, on the quantitative tightening more than we should, but through interest rates. But nevertheless, so ROI, if you're making an investment, if you're using a line of credit or something like that to do it, certainly rates have to come into play now. But back in July, we were talking about, and since then, I've had this conversation with so many people about pre-COVID ROI and post-COVID ROI. So pre-COVID ROI was pretty simple equation. If I automate, be it robotics or some type of a dedicated machine, custom machine, something like that does the process, what will be my payback period? And usually the easiest way was, does it reduce labor? And so labor reduction, that was kind of the theme all the way up till COVID, till 2020. Post-COVID, we're dealing with a labor shortage. So it's not about reduction of labor. It's about, how do I free up labor in order to get them working on something that's not a very automatable process.
Reclassifying the labor.
And reclassifying the labor. So for those of you new to our program, there's 4 reasons. So this is Brandon's Brandology. 4 reasons to automate. Traditionally, you would automate a system if you want to increase quality or consistency of the product, how you make it, how well you make it. If you want to decrease cycle time or increase your production rates, which is kind of the same thing. If you want to take advantage of flexibility, quick setup, so that means the machine can retool quickly from one part to making another part. And then fourthly, reclassifying labor. We used to say labor reduction. Now we say reclassification of labor. So these are the reasons you would automate, but the ROI equation has sometimes it focuses in on decreased cycle time, increased production, because you get more parts out the door, and that's still very feasible. But mostly it looks at just a cost reduction of labor, because that's a very easy calculation. But in the post-COVID ROI,
you don't have the labor.
You don't have the labor. And so now it's a situation of not making the truck. And so that definitely falls under increased production. And so when you start looking at that, and of course, ROI is also comes down to one thing. Are you looking to grow or just stay the same? If you're looking to grow, then you can really get the ROI down potentially. So for example, if you're looking to grow and you have one machine that's being operated by an operator, or two operators rather, one on the loading end, one on the unloading end, and you can put two machines closely together to where you can have now a second machine, but that means a second loader and a second unloader. And let's say that the loading is too complex for a robot. It just doesn't make sense, the cost. And when you look at the cost on that, it's just going to be too much. But the unloading is just unloading. Suddenly, if you can position those two machines where it's feasible, and it may not be, this is just a scenario, and this is probably a best case scenario, where we could take our single robot and handle the unload of both. Now we can take, if we position them the right way, we might be able to take that existing one operator and have the one operator handle loading both.
Okay.
But even if you have two operators, you've doubled your production and only added one extra person and the robot versus adding three people, right? Two people.
Okay.
Two people, yeah. But you're adding three because you eliminate one.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just by adding the robot on the unload, if it can tend both sides of the unload, you could take the third person that was unloading and move them to the load position, have two people loading. You haven't added a person. You've doubled production. If one person can load them both,
yeah, that's what I was wondering.
then now you've eliminated three positions, right?
Okay.
The two that you would have added plus the one that you already had.
Uh-huh.
And you're not eliminating these positions. You're taking that one and moving them to somewhere else to do something that doesn't make sense to automate. So the four things that make a good robot automation. Number one, if you're looking at a process, and this is as you're going through and doing your assessments, if you're looking at a process and you're watching a person do it, if they could do it blindfolded. Now, that doesn't mean that if they can't do it blindfolded, you can't automate it. It just means the budget has to go up. So we have to have a vision system, robotic vision or something like that. But if you could put a blindfold on them and have the part always presented in the right place where they reach down to grab it, then that is a good sign. Number two, can they do it with one arm tied behind their back so they don't need both hands to do their job? Number three, can they put an oven mitten or just a mitten, not a glove? So basically your fingers are tied together. You just have one finger and thumb. So that emulates a gripper. Can they do the job with that? In other words, they're not doing any precise, intricate adjustment of the part. And then number four, if their feet were glued to the floor where they can't step and walk around and move around, if you can say yes to all four of those, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You need to look at that very closely as far as automating. And then finally, if you say, well, yeah, we could automate that, but we really only run that on one part or one shift, or it's a service part, so we don't even run one shift consistently, then you need to listen to, I can't remember which episode it was, where we were featuring our SmartShift Robotics.
Mechanically.
It was increasing your ROI mechanically.
Yes.
And so SmartShift, and of course, this has to do more with collaborative robots typically, but it can be with industrial robots.
It doesn't have to inflate.
Inflate, that's it. Check out that episode. Because what we're talking about is SmartShift gives a dovetail style mount for the base of the robot, and also quick change for the tooling on the end of arm robot. But you can actually take, and specifically this really fits with collaborative robots, but you can actually unmount it from one process and move it over to another, or you can have it on a stand that's mobile, move it over there, and with the SmartShift technology, we can lock that in. That sets our datum points, which means we can call up another program, and now we have just amortized the ROI across multiple applications. So now we can start taking one robot, and if it's service parts, it may run this one for a week and then jump over and run this one for a week, but we're still getting the turn of product out from under it. And so you can realize an ROI that way, increased production and reclassification of labor. So that's the post-COVID ROI, is to really focus on those things. We're looking at the same things, but we're looking at them differently. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with our Hanwha line, and also with the FANUC line and the Motoman lines that we have of robots, the cost on robots have come down considerably from what they used to be. And so I'm just saying it's attainable. Mm-hmm. It's something you might want to look at. Now, certainly, the labor shortage was a predicted challenge, and it came true.
Yeah, for sure. Supply chain instability and reshoring. Reshoring,
yeah. Yes. We've already talked about supply chain instability with semiconductor shortages, resin shortages, just turkey shortages. There's a lot of shortages going on, and it's just been a rough year for that. I mean, just for portage reasons, for labor reasons in foreign countries, global. This is, and by the way, this is not, inflation and labor shortage is not something that's just affecting us here in the United States.
It's not unique to us.
Not at all. It is a global issue that we're facing. Now, here's something that's a potential upswing.
Okay.
As far as the semiconductor shortages, if it's bad if you are heavily invested in your portfolio, your stock portfolio in some of the major chip manufacturers, which, by the way, we're seeing a lot of them reshore. To your point, mm-hmm. They're bringing that stuff to the United States. Of course, it takes a long time to grow a chip.
Yeah, we talked about that. Which episode was that one?
I don't remember.
Goodness gracious.
We've done quite a few.
Yeah.
Where we were talking about, my mom was asking me, why don't you just make semiconductor chips?
It doesn't have to be in short supply.
Short supply, yeah. So we were talking about the supply chain, yeah. But nevertheless, we see that coming to the United States. We see more of these factories coming here. And especially in automotive, here in Tennessee, and globally, but especially in the U.S., there's a push for electric vehicles. Elon's not the only one pushing that with Tesla, and so in Tennessee, we're seeing they've got a lot of plants that are coming into play now that are going to be heavily into EV manufacturing. As opposed to going outside of the United States to get those things. So we're seeing a lot of that manufacturing come here, and that's a good thing. Good for jobs and things of that nature. But many of us, and I keep coming back to semiconductors because that's been our number one pain point, mm-hmm. But also most everybody, even if whether you're looking for a gas engine or a hybrid or an EV, semiconductors have affected that process in the automotive industry. So if your portfolio is heavy laden with some of the major chip manufacturers out there, this is a bad thing. They missed their third quarter projections. They were down. They did not deliver what they thought they were going to deliver, which means demand has fallen off. Well, why were we having why did we get in this semiconductor mess to begin with? And what many say is that because of the 2020 lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, we all had to start working from home. We couldn't go to the movies anymore, so we had to get we had to stream, so we had to have streaming, we had to have smart TVs, we had to have Bluetooth stuff, we had to have all this stuff, and so these chip manufacturers, and then automotive also, because their dealerships were all closed because everybody had to be locked down. So they just assumed America was not going to buy any vehicles, and so they shut down. Most of the large OEMs shut down operations, especially Asian. But even the GMs and the Fords and the Dodges, and they shut down all their production, and so the chip manufacturers are like, well, we don't have any customers right now. Well, suddenly there's this surge of we need Apple Watches, we need Xboxes because we have to entertain ourselves at home now. We got to watch movies. We've got computers, new laptop. Everybody needs a new laptop. Need webcams, microphones, speakers, all these kind of things that we had to have that have chips in them. And so they just turned all their resources toward that. And then automotive was like, wait a minute, these folks are coming back. They're wanting to buy cars. And they said, okay, send us chips. And the chip manufacturers were like, sorry, get in line. And so that's where we've been for the largest part of half of 2021 and all of 2022. Well, in Q3, which was just ended last month, their projections, they fell short, and so their stock dropped. So which is a bad thing if you have stock in that. But if you're in the automotive industry or in the manufacturing industry, or you need your automation equipment so you can get your automated processes up and going, or your spare parts or whatever, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means all of the people that were blowing it up with laptops and smartwatches and smart TVs and things of that nature are not buying as much now. And so they're now should be able to turn around and start backfilling these orders to automotive OEMs and tier 1s, tier 2s, and also to those of us who need automation equipment.
Yeah.
And so we should start seeing those things come out. So it's going to make for an interesting Q4, but also here in the United States and globally, we have Christmas and New Year, and so a lot of people, especially in the United States, don't do a lot of work in November and December. But we may have to change that, guys. You may have to pay out some vacations to get people to stick around, because I think we're going to start seeing a lot of things come back. But maybe not. Maybe the other analysts are right, and it's going to be flat into Q1, maybe Q2, our first 2 months, month 1, month 2 of Q1, let's say. But the fact that those chips are coming, should be, for automotive, coming back should be a very good thing, because especially here in the Eastern Tennessee region, there is a lot of automotive in Tennessee in general, but especially here in Eastern Tennessee. And so hopefully, as that business is coming back, you want to be thinking about your automation. But hopefully that, for some, that's a bad thing, but for others, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, so number 3 of the major predicted challenges affecting manufacturing in 2022, smart factory initiatives / the acceleration in digital production technologies. I think it's the adaptation of
automating.
Yes.
So this actually is exactly what we talked about in July with the industrial automation. It doesn't have to be a loss. That was July 13th. And also, I guess before that, maybe the episode even before that, doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This was July. Yep. Early July
of last year,
when I was saying, if you're going to automate, do it now, because I was predicting the Fed would raise rates.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. The Fed has really raised rates. Mm-hmm. And so we just talked about that a minute ago. But they were predicting that was going to be a challenge. Now, challenge can be interpreted 2 ways. Challenge good, challenge bad. Challenge bad is it's difficult, you can't hardly get there. Challenge good, you should consider it. we're challenging you to do this. And so that goes hand in hand, of course, with labor shortage. You need to start doing some smart factory initiatives. Now, that's not just automating. That also can be, working more, bringing your plant to a more efficient level. So IoT-based systems, getting data, pulling from the machines and things of that nature. We talked a lot about swapping pneumatics for electrics, because pneumatics air is fantastic and relatively low cost at the beginning. A pneumatic cylinder on a machine costs less than an electric cylinder, servo or stepper, closed loop stepper based electric cylinder. But in the long term, the electric costs less to operating cost, and so you will actually spend less across the lifespan of the two.
Yeah. I think folks need to go back to the first episode of this season, Industrial Automation. We didn't name it, number 33. We talked about CKD's electric solutions.
That's right, the CKD electrics, which we've had a great luck out of. Not luck, they just built a great product.
They're good.
And so, and they're priced very competitively, and also they can get those cylinders in 2 to 3 weeks.
That's awesome.
They're not hitting the supply chain issues. There's some certain items. I mean, there's always certain items in the place, but CKD has managed that very, very well. That the factory initiatives aren't just automate, but make these investments. And I don't know, when you're doing an IoT-based system, IoT can be done manually, but that falls back on labor. I'm not even going to get into all the potential human errors and things of that nature, but it falls back on labor. And so if labor is kind of the problem, which for most it is, then an automated IoT system where it's automatically pulling this information, or at end of shift it puts this stuff together, or whatever, it's just getting you quality data in a quality amount of time, then make those investments into those systems is what we were talking about in July of last year.
Yeah.
We'll get into it. It's not too late to do that stuff, but we'll get into it.
And you'd save that person from writing down the stuff. That's one person writing the stuff down, another one entering in the system, and then you have the possibility of, mistyping.
The one person that looks up and says, that can't be right. We don't believe that data. You don't want that. So, that has to do with the IoT system. So it's more than just robots and automated machines.
Yeah.
But it brings us to another.
The fourth one, the big topic for us, cybersecurity.
That's right. And cybersecurity, that really split the world wide open in 2021, and it has not stopped through 2022. Ransomware, malware has just run amok. It's big business. And unfortunately, it's big business with the primary industry being manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so these bad actors, basically these cyber criminals have learned what a PLC is. And what operational technology is, how manufacturing equipment runs, whether it's PC based or it's PLC based. They figured that out, and they figured out how easy of a target it is. And so all they have to do is penetrate. So all they have to do is get in. And so no longer is the threat of an employee accidentally clicking on a phishing email the only threat. It's not about they're not going after the accounting systems to ransom those and things of that nature. They want to come in and sniff around and see the architecture of the plant, and then start looking for PLCs and PCs, specifically PCs that are on the production floor running specific production based softwares that they can piggyback because they're not secured, and suddenly ransom the whole manufacturing segment of the plant. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
We talked about stories where one of the things that the cyber criminals were doing is walking around some of the campuses of these plants and things of that nature, and dropping thumb drives generic looking thumb drives,
Yeah.
just kind of dropping them in the grass off the sidewalk at the entrance, things of that nature, in the smoking area, those kind of things, and maybe even muling them in with them, temporary employees or whatever. And then the only way you can tell what's on a thumb drive is to plug it into your computer, and it may look just fine when you plug it in. It's not like the world's going to blow up, but you've now transferred their malware into the system, and now it's on the hunt. And it's a time bomb. It's a ticking thing, and it's going around and it's figuring it out. It's AI. It's learning.
Yeah.
And you don't really know necessarily if your systems are have that or not. And then there's the whole false security of air gapping. It's not online. It's not on the internet.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what air gapping was.
Well, that's false security. These systems are not connected to the internet.
Oh, okay.
So they're safe.
Oh, okay.
Which also is an excuse by OT to disable firewalls and uninstall virus softwares and malware scanners and things of that nature. And so basically it becomes a system with no immune system for when something does jump the air gap. And bringing... Maybe it's not some you're like, okay, so no cyber criminal is going to be throwing thumb drives around our plant, right? Well, maybe you just went home, worked from home remotely, plugged in a thumb drive there, or maybe a contractor came in who doesn't even work for you, but he or she needs to hook up to a machine with their laptop. Your laptop, your IT folks, and that you don't know whether they're doing, and I'll be honest with you, OT folks, I'm one of them. We're the worst. We'll disable the virus stuff instantly.
We'll keep production going
because we just need to get it, have it working, and we want to work it fast. And we're not IT people, so we're kind of programmed not to care, and we got to change that mentality. So cybersecurity is a huge, huge concern. We talked about our IOTA and about the hardened hardware design of the IOTA, and how IoT, what's the marketing term? Bringing it together. We want to, IoT, bringing it together. Come on, you know the word.
I'm trying to think of what you were.
They're wanting to bring the systems together. We're wanting to isolate them.
Oh, convergence.
Convergence.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I didn't. I'm terrible at these games.
Yeah. So if you're watching the video, I'm trying to do what is it? The Pictionary.
Type.
Yeah, I'm trying
terrible at that.
Charades over here, and she's not picking up on my.
One word, two syllables.
Yeah. So convergence versus what I call isolation. And so convergence, because they need the systems to talk. Yes, that's true. Our design on our IOTA, and this isn't a sales pitch, it's just a fact. Our design basically is a hardened design, not a firewall-based design. So it's not easily penetrable, if at all. Whereas a firewall can be penetrated, but especially when you set up port forwarding, then all of a sudden I've got an open avenue. And I don't want to get into a fight with the IT people about you didn't set it up right and all that kind of stuff. OT people don't set it up right? Because we don't know. We don't want to deal with that. But nevertheless, and I'm throwing off on us OT folks because I are one, but with the IOTA design, it's a hardened design, which means that our IOTA processor and firmware can look out. It's not PC-based. It's not Windows-based. It's a proprietary kernel, and so it's not so susceptible to things. And it can move data from the OT side to the IT side. And all it means is it doesn't protect you from attack. It just means that you're not going to easily jump that gap, use us as a bridge to the other side. So if something turns loose on the OT side and starts wreaking havoc, it's not going to get to the upstairs systems, most likely, and vice versa. But cybersecurity is, if you're in manufacturing, you need to be awake about that one.
I thought I'd encourage people to go back and listen to the "It Doesn't Have to Be Risky" episode with Keith on there.
Yeah, we were talking to Keith about that. That was a great episode.
Mm-hmm. And the fourth one challenge would be sustainability.
Yeah, and sustainability.
We had a good episode with with LinMot,
Mm-hmm.
with Peter with LinMot, talking about their sustainability efforts that they're doing, that they're making things smaller. And I go through our partners and see what they're doing,
Yeah.
their efforts are, and they all of them have some great. They make their products smaller, more compact, use less stuff.
Use less energy.
Yeah.
So more energy efficient. With Siemens does this. That's their mainstay. Is energy initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yaskawa.
I love their rechargeable ones.
Yeah. Where they regen
Yes,
back onto the line, and Siemens does that out of the box. Yaskawa, some models do, some models don't, and they're VFD models and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely finding those ways of saving energy savings. The cost of energy has gone up.
Yes, dramatically.
And of course, get ready for more of that, because we're trying to, as the U.S., it seems like everybody's, whether you like it or not, we're moving toward an electric vehicle world. And so the infrastructure is going to have to change to support that. Currently, the infrastructure does not support that. And so as we begin to do that, somebody's got to pay for that. And for those of you who might not know this, the government paying for it doesn't mean that's free.
No, they get their money from you, the taxpayer.
It comes from each and every one of us. And so, but you're also going to see that in terms of rate hikes, and we've seen that a little bit already. So electricity is going to become more expensive. So becoming more energy efficient is certainly going to be a worthwhile thing. And so
I would encourage people to listen to that episode to hear some cost-saving measures that they can do.
The wasteful episode.
Yeah.
So that was season 2, episode 15.
Yeah.
Look at me, how smart I am. She's got that on my notes here. So yeah, check that out where we talk about a lot of those green initiatives. And it's not just about, again, we talked about pneumatics replaced with electrics and things of that nature. And so why, some people may ask and have asked me, why do you say pneumatics uses air? Why would it be costly for electricity? Well, you have to compress that air. And there's always, in every pneumatic system, there's leaks. It's a constant thing to compress air. You're putting work in, electrical work, to create mechanical work through, you're building up potential energy, which is compressing air. So you're giving it a pressure. So you have to pump that up. So that's electrical work that's going in. And as long as it's going straight to the end of the cylinder 100%, then it's pretty good. But there is no 100% efficient. Yeah. You have leaks along the way. You have leaks just getting into the cylinder. You have leaks within the cylinder. And so you don't get 100% of, for every pound of every PSI of air that we pump up, we get work. There's loss. There's loss also in electrical, but it's electrical systems, but it's not. What we found is it's not as costly in the long run as pneumatics and the cost of compressing air. Okay. And so that's where that comes from. So we've looked back.
Yes, and now looking
up to
forward.
Now. So what do we see coming, Beth?
The same things. Unfortunately, we've got inflation and recession added to the list.
Yeah. So now we've got some more weird things coming in. Are we in recession or are we not? That's one that if you're in manufacturing.
Well, there's definitely inflation that we are battling. So that's something.
Did I say inflation or recession?
Oh, I said recession. I should have said inflation.
Oh, yeah. So are we in recession or are we not? Do we have inflation? Yes. Is that inflation going to be falling off? I think it's, in a very micro way, has already started falling off, because we're seeing in Q3, we in fact, I was talking to one of our bankers just today, that they're already seeing a huge, they've seen a huge, just in the month of, last month of September into October, they have seen a huge reduction in mortgage applications and new construction applications, loan applications, and things of that nature. So we're seeing the effects of the Fed raising the rates. Did they need to raise them again? Probably not, but they did. So we're going to see more of the effects because when you press the brake pedal really hard, when you press it, the car slows down. When you press it really hard, the car could skid out of control.
Oh, I was thinking everything. My purse flies
up. And stuff hits you in the back of the head, yeah. And so, you gotta, we've got to hopefully they've got a good handle on it. But I'll reserve my opinions on that. But nevertheless, it's going to be, we've got all the stuff we had before. So labor shortage, supply chain instability, the initiatives to try to automate, to try to battle that, but also cybersecurity challenges, and then again, sustainability. Some of those are requirements, right? Some plants, according to where you are on this globe, are being required, and according to who your customer base is, are being required to show sustainability type measures. So you have all that on top of, on top of that, you have inflation, and yes, guys, we're moving into, if we're not in recession, it's coming. So we're coming with a recession. How long it'll be, that's a question. But at the same time, what things are starting to break loose? And so we talked, like the semiconductor stuff. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in certain industries that are really tied to semiconductors. We have inflation. We have, and that's to battle inflation, we've pushed ourselves into recession. But suddenly, the supply chain's starting to break free. We hope. And so suddenly we've got the supply to meet the backlogs. So will we really feel the recession? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but there's definitely inflation. So what can manufacturers do?
Well, okay, so let's take that. So what's coming? So what's some of the things that we can do to combat that? Well, number one, you if you haven't already started taking steps to shore up your supply chain,
it might be too late.
Maybe. You got to start looking for other options. And goodness gracious, I've told this to many people as I've talked to our customers and longtime customers, new customers. There's times that I feel like that we're more of a counselor based. We're being more counselors, guidance counselors, or just grief counselors, I guess, grief counseling than a sales organization, because we just can't get this stuff, and they need it, but we just can't get it, and so we're looking for. We spend so much time trying to locate alternatives that can work, and it's just we're almost getting good at it now. But it's not fun.
No.
and man, it's a lot of time.
Yes, very laborsome.
But yeah, you need to shore up your supply chain. And some of our manufacturers have been kind of doing that. When you end up with lemons, you make lemonade. So a few, Siemens is one of them, where they've had some of their products, not all. They're kind of, they've got a huge breadth of products, so it's not all the products across the board, but some key products where if the lead time was looking really long and they were kind of, long in the tooth, let's say, as far as the life cycle of a product. Of course, some of the cases, the chip manufacturers have just said, we're not going to make that chip anymore.
Oh, so they have to, okay.
So they're forced to do this, but they've taken the initiative to say, let's just, instead of making our customers just wait a year, during that year time, or 6 months or however long, during that time, what can we do to revamp the product? And a lot of times they're revamping it to say, let's design in some new chip or this hard to get chip, let's design that out to another chip that we can get from 2 or 3 different vendors. So we shore up from having to deal with this again, but we'll also add in these features and we'll release the thing as in 6 months or, if it's a year, whatever. We won't just say, okay, now here's your product. Here's your improved product. And now this product also is shored up from a supply chain standpoint, and it may be even more energy efficient. It may have more capabilities, things of that nature. And so they're making the best out of it.
Yeah.
And so I have no choice but to be impressed with that, because I think that's a wise thing to do. It's a smart move. The other thing, again, if you haven't started building up your cash flow reserves, you probably need to. Now I'm sitting here talking automate, and now I'm saying build up your cash flow reserves. We've been talking about that for most of the year too. It's never too late to try to find a way to do that. Unfortunately, it can be tough. Nobody expected this to go on this long. But it's something that every manufacturer, small, medium, or large manufacturer, needs to be thinking about, is how can we build up our cash flow reserves so that we can manage cash flow. Cash flow is a big deal. You got to keep your people paid. Which brings us to another one: invest in your workforce. Actually, I skipped one. The other one was structural type solutions. So I'm not finding a lot of those.
The one thing I found was Section 48C, the manufacturer's tax credit, and I'll put a link to a quick fact sheet about it. It looked like it would be very particular.
Yeah.
So we won't go into more of that.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, I'll put it in the show notes.
Well, the point I'll make is I'm not seeing, in 2020 we had the payroll protection program that was really focused at small to medium, but also some, of the larger businesses. Yes, a lot of people took advantage of that. The rules were not as tight as maybe they should have been, but for many, many people, it did its job. I've not seen very much of that. There was a second round in 2021, but it became very tightened because of so many people taking advantage of it. And also into 2022, I think there was another kind of sub round of that. Maybe you had to pay it back, something like that. But I haven't seen a lot of those types of things, resulting from in 2021 and 2022. But I'm not I'm not the know-all on that. But I just haven't seen it. I kind of look for it, but I haven't looked for it a lot.
Yeah.
But everybody heard about the payroll protection program.
Yeah.
So I hadn't heard that, and I'm not familiar with the 48C manufacturer's tax credit either. But check that out in the show notes. Maybe it applies to you, and if so, take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But investing in the workforce, and so what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
It means different things to different people.
I took it as one thing. You took it as another.
Yeah.
My thought was training your people up.
Yeah, and that's the correct answer. My thought was the difference between being an optimist, which is Beth, and being a pessimist, which is me, is that you're having to pay your people more.
Yeah.
And there are some that falls in line with what you're talking about. Just paying people more, just to pay them more to steal employees from the manufacturer down the street, is a very, very short-sighted and short-term solution. And what that means is you're going to end up with folks that are going to be there until someone else pays them a nickel more.
But that's why you need to give them a reason to stay.
Give them a reason to stay. So that's the investing you're talking about. But to me, if they want bigger wages, give them a clear path, an encouraging path to level up.
Yeah.
And so that's through the training initiatives and things of that nature. So just like we're talking about reclassification of labor, I promise you, if I walked through your plant and picked out a couple of potential automation opportunities for just as many, for more than just as many that we found that were great opportunities to automate, we would find 10 times that of ones that it just does not make sense to put a machine or a robot or something like that in that process to try to automate. The ROI is just too long. So reserve those processes for the labor, and you may have to train them up.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, for the menial type task, if we can go put in a robot, enroll those people, those maintenance folks, even the ones on the line that have mechanical aptitude and interest. If they show promising interest, enroll them into some trainings, just like trainings here at elliTek University, so we can train them on the robots and how to be robotic technicians, maintenance technicians for those products, and they will get a raise.
Yes.
Because they're moving up. And so you're not just having to pay them more just because, you're paying them more because they deserve it, because they're more valuable to your process. it's not just about stealing employees. That's a very short-sighted. Now, sometimes you have to, I guess. So I'm not telling you how to run your business, but I think the long game comes down to investing in the training initiatives, and that goes hand in hand with automating. So
I think you have another one.
Well, mine is automate. I just said that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think that's what you should do is automate. So even though rates are really high right now, and so if you're having to borrow the money, I get it. You got to figure that out. But at the same time, you can't just stop. If you're looking and saying, okay, well, I believe that the analysts that say that the first, Q1, first 3 months of 2023 is going to be flat. Then hopefully Q2 is not. There's going to be growth. So what that means is if you say, well, it's going to be flat, so I'm just going to hold off. I'm just going to kind of take a nod from the Bible story. I'm just going to bury the money that I was entrusted with in the ground and do nothing with it.
Or you could make lemonade.
Then suddenly, come Q2, if the whole world comes rushing back, manufacturing comes rushing back, and hopefully it's not Q2, hopefully it's Q1, but even if those analysts are right, and it does extend out to Q2, when it does, you're not going to have enough labor because there's still, I'm sure, going to be a labor shortage in manufacturing. And so if you've not found a way to make those investments now reasonably. Now, here's what I say. I've talked to some people, they're just like, yep, if we can do this in one machine, we're going to do it in 100 machines through the plant. I've heard that for my whole career. And that's a dangerous analogy, especially right now. It might not even be necessary. Spend a little bit of money and automate one process. And yes, I can. If we can automate this, I've got 20 more, 30 more, 100 more of the same process throughout my plant that I can put this on. But spend the time right now in the investment to perfect the one versus trying to get volume discounts and everything right now for the short term and getting 20, 50, 100 automated systems that have flaws. Because the flaws and the cost of those flaws and the frustration of those flaws will far, far outweigh any kind of a volume discount that you would lose from just doing one right now.
Yeah, but if you do that one, get it perfected.
That's right.
Then the next you could do the 19.
Yeah, do it that way.
And so discount.
And so let's play that out. So we go ahead and make an investment, maybe Q4. We just go ahead and get it done. We're going to have it perfected and stuff, where it's where we're going to spend the remaining Q4 of 2022 and part of Q1 2023, and everything. And then we're going to stop. And then we're going to stop. And we're going to set idle with this perfect automated one system that we could duplicate 20, 30, 40, 100 times. But we're waiting on Q2, and if we suddenly start seeing manufacturing ramping up, we've got a perfected system. It's just a matter of installing. So we don't have to debug. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to do all this stuff. It's all ready to go. Boom. Now we just start doing it. And so we grow with our industry. That's the best scenario, especially when money's not cheap right now. But it also lets you get so much more bang for your buck. Mm-hmm. So, guys, I hope that this has been interesting. We've gone long. And
imagine that.
Yeah. We actually shortened this one before we started.
Yeah, we did.
So I'm sorry we've gone long, but hopefully you found it interesting. It's really going to be an interesting remaining 2022 and into 2023. So hopefully the very best comes for you and your business and your manufacturing. But if it's something that elliTek, you feel like elliTek can help you with, I certainly want to invite you to reach out.
Yes. If you're in the East Tennessee region.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please call us and talk to one of our engineers, have them come out and do an automation assessment. At your facility. We'd love to do that. Yeah, do that. There's no charge to that. We'll walk through with you, look at everything, tell you from our experiences what we think, that makes a lot of sense, or these are the things you might want to consider. You're not alone. Yeah. So the opportunity is here, and we're throwing it out there to you. So elliTek, www.ellitek.com. That's ELLITEK.com, or you can give us a call at 865-409-1555. Or email us at info@ellitek.com. We'd love to talk with you. So check us out on LinkedIn and all those other things. That's right. And if you value this show, get a little bit of the value of it, share, tell your friends about it.
Yeah, tell your friends. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit us the 5-star rating. That gives us, leave comments as well. That helps the mechanism work. We love seeing your all's comments.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, also LinkedIn and all those kind of 5-star ratings on your podcasting apps and all that kind of stuff helps us just get out to more people. So we want to wish you guys, once again, a happy Veterans Day.
Yes. Thank you for your service.
A happy Thanksgiving. Go get your turkey because they're not cheap. Put it in the freezer. Or actually, you can pre-buy. Some stores are letting you pre-buy.
I'll put it on layaway.
And yeah, basically, and they'll put it in their cooler for you, so you don't have to make refrigerator or freezer space. But enjoy your Thanksgiving, guys. We appreciate everything. Have a great month.
See ya. Thank you.
See you later. Hey guys, thanks for checking out today's episode of Industrial Automation It Doesn't Have To. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure you give us a rating that's pretty doggone high, and do that everywhere you listen, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget about our website. That's www.ellitek.com. That's ELLITEK.com. If you want to reach out to us there, you can fill out our contact form. We'd appreciate it. Also, you can email us at info@ellitek.com. And certainly for those of you that still like to dial the phone, give us a call, 865-409-1555. We'd love to hear from you.